Well, all right. Good morning, everybody. How are we feeling this morning? Good? All right. Well, hey, my name's Steve. I'm one of the pastors on the team here, and just want to say welcome to everybody. We're so glad that you're here with us at Icon. In fact, if you're new around here, or maybe you haven't been around in a while, you picked a great Sunday to come back around, because today we're actually kicking off a brand new series, and we're calling it The Leadership Gap. And what we're going to be doing over the next few weeks is we are diving in and we are exploring all things leadership. Now, I remember back when I first started thinking about leadership and kind of getting into this mindset. I was about 17 years old, and I just recently started following Jesus and started getting, plugged into church, and I started going to our youth group every single Wednesday night, and I started getting involved serving. And it was in this season that I remember there was this one specific Wednesday night where there was a few of us that were kind of there early serving. And we were sort of getting everything ready for the night, and we were kind of talking to our youth pastor at the time, and we were sort of kicking around some ideas for that night. We were talking about, hey, so what if we did this or that? So I don't remember exactly what the idea was that I threw out there, but I remember I threw some idea out, and I said, hey, what if tonight we did such and such, and we kind of took this angle? Like, what do you guys think about that? And I remember my youth pastor looked back at me, and he said, hey, Steve, man, that's an awesome idea. Why don't you lead that? To which I immediately regretted saying a word. You know what I mean? Like immediately I was like, dang it, like I don't want to do this. Like I'm not, I remember I actually said this to him. I said, man, why don't you do it, man? I'm not a leader. Okay, I don't know if you ever felt like that, but that's how I felt. And I'll never forget what he said when he looked back at me, because he said, Steve, yes, you are. Everyone is a leader. Now, for some reason, all these years later, that still stuck with me. And I think, it's kind of counterintuitive for some, because in some ways it's like, if everyone is a leader, then that means no one's following. And then if no one's following, can you be leading no one? Like it kind of breaks down. Like, and I don't know about you, but like I said, there's a lot of times I don't really feel very much like a leader. And so it was just counterintuitive. But I think what I've come to realize over the years, the more that I thought about that, is that everyone is leading someone. Everyone. Every single person that's here in this room this morning, you are leading someone, right? And we all lead in different arenas. We all have different leadership hats that we put on, and we have different influence. Some of you, maybe you started your own company, you're an entrepreneur, and you're leading a company. Maybe you're here, and at your workplace, you lead your department, or you lead a group of people around a project. Maybe you are a teacher, and here in a couple weeks, you're getting ready to go back to school to lead a classroom of students in education. Listen, and by the way, if you're a teacher, I just want you to know you're my hero. We're praying for you. We're excited for you as you go back into this next school year. We really do believe in you guys. My wife's a teacher, so I'm a little biased, but I'll tell you what, you lead in that context. Some of you, man, you lead your family, and you lead your kids, and you're influencing them every single day, and you're leading in that way. Some of you are leading in the community. Maybe you lead your HOA in your neighborhood, and if that's you, we will pray for you, okay, because you need it. Or we have youth here and students that every single week right here at Icon Church are leading in different capacities, whether they're leading in eKids or they're serving in some capacity. But the reality is that everyone is leading someone. And what I want to do today is I want to talk about the biggest challenge that you and I face in our leadership. And it's not something that you'll do, but rather it's someone that you lead. And the challenge with this person is probably the most difficult person that you will ever lead. And if you haven't guessed who I'm talking about you, because we face our greatest leadership challenge every morning in the mirror. And it really is true. I don't know if you realize this or not, but you are a really hard person to lead. Do you know that? I mean, forget about you listening to other people. Listen, you don't even listen to you, right? Let alone other people. I mean, you are a really, really difficult person to lead. And here's what I know about you. And this may be a little depressing for some of you to hear, but here's the truth, is that you have participated in every single bad decision that you have ever made. Did you know that? It's true. You really have. I have participated in every single bad decision. There's not one that I missed. I was there for all of them. I was there for every bad financial decision I made. I was there for every bad parenting decision I've ever made. I was there for every bad professional decision. Listen, I was there for every single one. When it comes to all of your bad decisions that you've made in your life, and Lord knows you've made a few, right? You are the common denominator. Did you know that? So before we dive in this series and we start talking about how to more effectively lead other people, and we're going to do that over the next few weeks, we're going to give you some principles that are going to help you to grow in your leadership. But before we can do that, we have to start today with the person in the mirror. And this is why this is so important, because you will never be a leader worth following if you don't learn to lead yourself well first. This is so important. You'll never be a leader worth following. You may lead other people, but that doesn't mean you're a leader worth following. We all know people in our lives who maybe they have leadership by title or by position, like you have to follow them because you get paid to follow them, it's your boss, but you look at their life and you're like, man, this person's a mess and they're all over the place and I can't stand this, right? You're not choosing to, you're by default, right? Because leadership by position is the lowest level of leadership. But if you want to really lead others and influence others and have people that want to be on your team, you'll never be a leader worth following unless you learn to lead yourself first. And we all sort of know this intuitively because we didn't have to go very far to figure this out. Most of us learned this at home, even though we maybe didn't have words to put around it. But think about this. Whether or not you want to be like your parents largely depends on how well they led themselves. You ever thought about that before? Because a lot of you in the room, you may be like your parents, you just don't really want to be like your parents, right? Like you may have all these great memories and emotions and affection and all that stuff, and you think back, but you find yourself using kind of qualifying statements sometimes, don't you? Or you'll say things like this, like, oh yeah, I love my dad. He was great, but, he was also he wasn't really ever around, and he was never really there, and he always was kind of all over the place, and, I love him, I just don't want to be like him. Or, yeah, I love my mom, she was great, but I don't want to parent like she parented. Why? Because whether or not you want to be like your parents has far more to do with how well they led themselves than it does with what they taught you or even how they discipline you, because you'll never be a leader worth following in any arena, whether it be your home or the community or at your workplace. You'll never be a leader worth following unless you learn to lead yourself well. And so today, here's where I want to go. I want to focus in on two things that seem to be the biggest obstacles that you and I face when it comes to leading ourselves. And these two things silently and subtly sabotage your leadership and your ability to lead yourself well if kept unchecked, and consequently cause you to not be effective in leading others. And so I want to talk about these two leadership killers. And the first one that I want to dive right in, is self-deception. All right, self-deception. And what's interesting about self-deception is, man, you guys are experts at this. I don't know if you realize this, but you are a sucker for you, right? You just are. And especially as leaders, we are so good at deceiving ourselves. In fact, we as leaders have a limitless capacity for self-deception. It's really true. In fact, we're so good at this, it's almost impressive how good we are at selling ourselves on things. What do? Anytime we want something, we immediately start to sell ourselves on that thing that we want. We immediately start to think of all the reasons why we should have or we should do that thing. Even if we know it's not healthy for us, we can start justifying it in our heads, and we start talking ourselves into all these things that we really want, even though we know it maybe isn't good for us. Think about all the stupid things that you've purchased over the years that you knew you couldn't afford, that you knew was not a wise thing. Think about the things that you've purchased that you saw it online and you just had to have it, or you just had to go buy the car. And you knew not only could you not afford it, not only was it not wise, you also knew that it was probably going to hurt your financial situation, but somehow you found a way to convince yourself that it was a good idea, right? The reason why is because as leaders, we have a limitless capacity for self-deception. This is true of all of us. Certainly is true of me. You may have noticed this morning that I brought some of my clothes up here with me. And you may be wondering, why are there clothes up here? Well, here's what happened. So about a year and a half ago, I kind of started on this health journey, you could say. And I started trying to eat more healthy. And I started working out every day. In fact, I started running literally every single day, rain or shine. I was running every day for like 9 months straight, and it was great. I started to get really healthy, and as a result of kind of eating better and exercising and all those things, I lost some weight. In fact, I lost like 50 pounds last year. It was about a year and a half ago. It was awesome. It was great. And so, one of the fun things about losing weight that happens is all of a sudden all your clothes don't really fit right anymore, and so you have to go buy new clothes, which it's always fun to buy new clothes when you've lost weight. It's never fun to buy new clothes when you've fatted out of your old clothes. not really a fun thing. It's kind of embarrassing. Like, you want to go late at night when it's dark outside, right? Like, I get it. And so, it was kind of fun. Like, I lost some weight. I'm feeling good. I'm like, I'm going to go find some clothes that make me look good. And so I got rid of all my old clothes because they didn't fit anymore. And I went out and bought all these new clothes, and it was super fun. It was awesome. It was awesome until this past year, these last few months, when my wife, Natalie, got pregnant. And so it turns out that there's this scientific phenomenon that happens when your spouse gets pregnant. I don't know if you've heard of it before. It's called sympathy weight. And this is real. I Googled it before I came in here this morning. This is science. What happens, actually, is it doesn't really matter who you are. It doesn't matter who you are. Somehow, the husband always gains weight whenever the wife is pregnant. It's just this scientific fact of life, right? And so, over these last few months, it turns out that we have discovered in my family that I am perhaps the most sympathetic person in our entire family. I'm very, very sympathetic. And over these last few months, I've gained like 25 pounds, which is awesome, right? And so, it didn't really happen overnight either, I was just trying to be this is what I would tell myself, because it's true, right, is I was trying to just be a supportive husband, I'm trying to love my wife, because Natalie's pregnant. She's due like any day now, by the way, so if you see me rush out of here, that's because she went into labor, and you guys are on your own for the rest of the service. But, here she is. She's growing another human being inside of her, right? Like, she's eating for two. I don't want her to feel alone in that, I don't want her to feel like self-conscious about that. Like, what kind of husband would I be, right? And so I've told myself over these last few months that the loving thing and the supportive thing to do is to get thirds and fourths, right? Like, that's the supportive thing. And so, listen, Jesus talks about this in the Bible somewhere, I'm pretty sure, so it's there. Just don't worry about looking it up, but it's there somewhere. Support your wife, love them. And so listen, if supporting and loving my wife means that I have to eat an entire pizza by myself, that's a cross I'm willing to bear for Natalie, okay? For my wife. I wouldn't do that for anybody, but for her, I'm willing to do that. And so let's just say these last few months, I have bore a lot of crosses, you could say, in loving and supporting my wife. Now, I got to say, it's been pretty awesome, actually, because I've just gotten to eat whatever I wanted, however much I wanted, and all for the sake of love, right? Like, it's been an amazing, amazing thing. Except for the problem now is all of a sudden, none of my clothes fit anymore. And at first, I thought it was Natalie's fault, and so I went to her and I said, babe, what are you doing with all of our laundry? Because all of my clothes have shrunk at exactly the same time, and you're really messing me over here. To which she informed me that, no, it's not our dryer. You're just getting, as she put it, fat. And so, right? Which, by the way, I thought was a little bit offensive, especially after how much I've gone out of my way to support her these last few months, and she's going to start name-calling, but whatever. And so it turns out that all these clothes don't really fit right anymore, and it's kind of a problem because, this is real. This is a real problem. We're going to get honest in church. These are my shorts. It's hot out. We live in Texas, and so I have this problem now where these shorts that I just bought not too long ago, all of a sudden, I have this really hard time getting them to button, okay? I don't know if anyone's ever experienced this, but I put these things on. It takes both hands, all right? I got to suck my gut in as far as it'll possibly go, and I just barely get this button to latch, and I finally get it to click in. I'm like, oh, thank God, I think I'm good, as long as I never breathe out, right? Because the second that I breathe out, God knows this button is flying across the room. It's going to be embarrassing. Nobody wins when that happens, right? Nobody wants this to happen. But that's where I'm at. I can't get these things to button. And so literally now I'm in this kind of dark place where I find myself looking over my shoulder and sort of looking for any opportunity to unbutton my pants because I'm just being honest. This is just real life, a little counseling session right here. It's not because I want to be more comfortable. It's just so I can breathe again, right? Because it's very, very difficult. It's gotten so bad. I'm to the point now where I'm starting to wear belts again, but for different reasons than when I used to. Because I used to wear a belt like normal people to keep your pants up or whatever. And now I wear a belt as my last line of defense in case my button finally fails me and shoots off across the room. And it's real life. It's a real problem. I'm not kidding. And so what have I been doing these last few months? I've been telling myself exactly what I want to hear to justify doing exactly what I want to do, which in this case is eating everything under God's green earth, right? Like that's what I've been telling myself. I've been telling myself that, yeah, I'm doing this for Natalie. It's because I love her and I want to support her. But really, it's because I love food, right? and here's the thing. It's classic self-deception, and we do this all the time because we have a limitless capacity to convince ourselves of anything we want. And at the end of the day, what have I been doing? I've just been lying to myself. Here's why that's a problem. Because you can't lead yourself as long as you're lying to yourself. I mean, it's just true. You can't lead yourself as long as you're lying to yourself. I don't know if you've ever had a liar on your team before, if you've ever tried to lead a liar, but it's impossible. It's like one of the most frustrating things ever when you have someone on your team that you can't trust, that's lying, because you can't depend on them. You don't know if they're going to do what they said they were going to do. And so you know what you have to do if you're a leader and you have a liar on your team? You have to fire him, right? You have to fire the liar. And so as we talk about self-leadership, what I would challenge us to do today, and if we're going to grow in our leadership, is we have to learn to fire the liar in us, right? We've got to learn to stop playing the self-deception game, to stop lying to ourselves and justifying everything just so we can feel good about ourselves, but rather to start leaning into the truth. Because I can talk all day long about, oh yeah, I'm doing this for Natalie, and the shorts still fit as long as no one sees me unbuttoning them, right? Like I can do that all day long, but deep down, I know the truth, right? And so as leaders, we got to make this decision if we're going to be an effective leader. We've got to decide this, that I will not lie to myself even if the truth makes me feel bad about myself. I've got to lean into this. Because some of us, what we do is we avoid the truth because we don't want to go there because it makes us feel kind of bad about ourselves and we'd rather just not deal with it. So we just avoid it altogether. But if you really want to grow in your leadership, you've got to decide that even if it makes me feel bad, I need to lean into the truth. This is something you probably won't hear in culture, but can I tell you something? There are worse things in life than feeling bad about yourself. And one of those is keeping the bad parts of yourself, right? It's okay to feel bad about that if it motivates you to change that. And so we've got to lean into the truth. And this is the question that we need to stop and ask ourselves. We need to ask ourselves this: why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? We need to really be brutally honest with ourselves when it comes to our destructive behavior, when it comes to the self-deceit. When we're in a situation, we need to ask ourselves, why am I doing this? And then we need to ask again, why am I doing this really? Why am I doing this really? Why am I eating this? Why am I avoiding her? Why am I reacting this way in this situation? Why do I feel the need to, why do I wear this? Why am I doing these things really? Because if we're going to grow in our leadership and we're going to grow in ourselves, man, I'll tell you what, we've got to decide we're going to put behind self-deceit and we're going to lean into the truth. In fact, Jesus said it probably best, as he usually does. Jesus said this in John 8. He said, the truth will set you free. The truth will set you free. When we lean into the truth, when we stop playing the self-deceit game, when we stop trying to justify it to ourselves so we feel better, the truth will set you free. But the opposite is equally true, that dishonesty imprisons you. It does. And some of you, you've been imprisoned when it comes to your leadership. You've put a lid on your leadership because you refuse to get honest with yourself. You keep playing the game. You've put a lid on your personal growth because you refuse to lean into the truth. And Jesus would look at you and say, man, if you want to be free, if you want to grow, you've got to lean into the truth and start getting honest with yourself. So it's so important. We've got to learn to give honest because self-deception sabotages our leadership. But the reality is, that's only one half of the equation. It's so critically important that you and I lean into honesty, but that's only half the equation because here's why. Those who don't know they don't know. Okay? I'll just say this 10 times fast. Those who don't know they don't know. Now, stay with me here. This is going to make sense. It makes sense here in a second. But those who don't know they don't know. There are plenty of bad decisions that you and I make all the time. That we know it's a bad decision, and we know we've been lying to ourselves. We know we're just telling ourselves whatever we want to hear. We get that. And the reality is, man, we're just deceiving ourselves, and we do this all the time. It's just like these shorts, right? Like, I can tell myself all day long that I'm a supportive husband, I love my wife, and that's why I'm getting fat, as she would put it, right? Like, I can tell her all those things. But I know deep down that the reason I can't fit into these shorts is not because I love my wife, right? I can get there on my own. Right? That self-deception. If I just decide, even if it makes me feel bad, I'm going to be honest, I can get there. I can figure out the shorts. I can figure out the self-deception. But this shirt, on the other hand, is a different story. Now, let me tell you about this shirt, because I love this shirt. A few years ago, I was in Daytona Beach, Florida, and I was there with a group of people. We're hanging out, and it got to be night, and we're hanging out on the beach, and it started to get a little chilly, so we went to the kind of a surf shop down the road, and I bought a hoodie. And I saw this hoodie. I thought, man, this is an awesome hoodie. Like, it's pretty hip. It's pretty cool. So I got this, and I brought it home with me after the trip, and it's been sitting in my closet pretty much ever since. And so recently, I was going to meet with some people, and I saw that hoodie, and I thought, oh, there's that hoodie. I forgot about that. That's awesome. So I'm going to grab it. So I grabbed the hoodie. I put it on. I'm heading out the door, and Natalie, my wife, stops me. She says, where are you going? And I said, oh, I'm going to meet, such and such. We're going to go meet at this place. It's going to be really cool. She said, okay. What are you wearing? And I said, excuse me? She said, what are you wearing? I said, oh, this is that hoodie that I got. Remember I was on the beach a few years ago? It's that really cool hoodie. And she says, no, you're not. And I said, excuse me? She said, you look ridiculous. And I said, babe, I don't look like, it's super like hip and cool. Like, this is what all the kids are wearing now, babe. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. She said, no. You look ridiculous. She said, unless you were on your way to like a Bob Marley concert or like you were high right now. You were not walking out of the house with this on. And I was like, babe. And she's like, no, you look absolutely ridiculous. Now, here's the thing. When I put this on that night, it's not that I wanted to look ridiculous. I just didn't know, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. I just wasn't self-aware. I thought this was pretty cool. Apparently, that's not true. And so, here's the reality. All of us in our leaderships, we have blind spots. We have gaps in our leadership that we don't know are there. We have issues. Apparently, for me, one of my issues is fashion, right? And you don't know what you don't know. We have these blind spots in our life. And this is a problem because the problems that you don't know about are the problems that you can't fix. So this is why this is such a big deal. Some of you, man, there are things in your life that you're just not self-aware enough to know are there. You have these issues that you can't deal with until you identify them. And the problems that you don't know about are the problems that you can't fix. So let me ask you, if there was something in your life that was limiting your leadership, that was limiting your ability to grow personally, wouldn't you want to know about that? Of course, right? We all would want to know about that. This is why self-awareness is so key to self-leadership, because self-awareness is actually the secret to effective self-leadership. We have to be aware, and we only get there with intentionality and humility. It's so important. We only get there with intentionality and humility. And so what I want to do with the remainder of our time today is I want to give you 3 steps to help you grow in your self-awareness, because this is so key if you want to lead yourself effectively and consequently lead the people around you effectively. And so I want to jump right in and give you 3 things to help you grow in your self-awareness. And here's the first one. If you want to do this, you got to pray, okay? Now, I know some of you are like, oh, cool, so the pastor wants me to pray, right? Like just, yes. Okay, I do, actually. Right? You got to pray. You say, why? Well, if you are a follower of Jesus, this is where this has to start. I love this verse in Psalm where it says this in Psalm 139. It said, search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. Point out anything in me that offends you and lead me along the path of everlasting life. What's he praying here? What's he getting? He's saying, God, search me. Show me the areas in my life that are offensive to you. Show me the blind spots that I don't even know are there. Show me all these areas. I need your help in this, God. As followers of Christ, we've got to start there. One of the prayers that I find myself praying often is this. I just pray, Jesus, man, give me eyes to see, and then give me the courage to respond, right? I find myself praying that all the time. Holy Spirit, reveal to me the issues in my heart and in my life. We've got to start there if we want to grow in our self-awareness. We've got to pray and ask. And then what you have to do after you pray is, number 2, you got to listen. You got to listen. I love what it says in Proverbs. It says this in Proverbs 15. It says, accepting constructive criticism opens your heart to the path of life, making you right at home among the wise. But refusing constructive criticism shows you have no interest in improving your life, for insight only comes as you accept correction and the wisdom that it brings. Such an important principle here. What's he getting at here? He's saying, listen, if you want to grow in your leadership, if you want to grow in your self-awareness, you need to be able to accept constructive criticism. You need to ask people to help, okay? We need to make this decision as a leader if we want to grow in our self-awareness. We need to decide this. I will not attempt to lead myself by myself. Get this. I'm going to choose intentionally. I'm not going to attempt to lead myself by myself. Every single person in this room, you know who we need? We need a Natalie, like I have, who will tell you when you look like an idiot before you walk out the door, right? We need somebody who is invited along with us in the journey, that can give us feedback, that can tell us how we're doing, that can highlight some of our blind spots and areas and opportunities for growth. We all need this. But here's the thing. The only way that you're going to get there is if you initiate it and you ask. Here's why. Because most people are far too nice to tell you that you look like an idiot before you walk out the door, right? Most people are much happier just, oh yeah, well, that's just him. He's just kind of out there a little bit, right? That's what most people do, unless you actually have the intentionality and the humility to ask and say, hey, would you tell me, man, how am I doing? Where am I at with this? If you are a senior leader in your organization, I got to tell you, you've got to be the one who initiates this, because your people are too afraid of you to tell you what they really think. But can I tell you something? Their perspective is so, so valuable because they see what you can't see. So we've got to ask. We've got to ask people to help us grow in our self-awareness and in our leadership. This isn't a new concept. I mean, for decades, CEOs and high-level leaders have been doing exercises like 360 evaluations where they get anonymous feedback from everyone in their company, and it helps them to identify these blind spots and these areas and opportunities for growth. And so what I would challenge you to do is we need to do our own version of a 360 evaluation. We need to figure out, what does it look like for me to ask people in my life to give me feedback so I can listen to them. So about a year ago, I decided that I was going to do this because for me, I realized that, man, I want to grow in my leadership. I don't want to just stay stagnant where I'm at. I want to grow. I want to get better. But I realized that I don't know what I don't know, and I can't fix it if I don't know it. And so I decided I was going to ask for help. And so what I decided to do was go to every single person on our team and have a conversation with them and just ask them, how am I doing? I'd ask them really pointed, intentional questions. Hey, when do you love having me on your team, and when do you hate having me on your team? I asked them questions like, man, what do you see as like, man, where am I doing good at, and where am I weak at? Where are my opportunities for growth, right? Essentially, all these questions that kind of boil down to this one question. What's it like to be on the other side of me? Because I know what it's like to be on this side of me, but what's it like to be on the other side of me? I know what my intentionality, I know what my intentions are and what I'm trying to accomplish, but how am I coming across and I don't even realize it? And so I sat down with every single person. I said, hey, there's nothing off limits. I want you to be totally honest with me. I need your help. I need your feedback. And I got to tell you, I was secretly hoping that they would look at me and tell me how awesome I was. I'm like secretly hoping, I'm like, they're going to tell me that I'm like a perfect leader. This is going to be awesome. This is going to be great. Instead, they opted to be honest, which I hated, but it was what it was, right? And I got to tell you, this was probably some of the most difficult conversations that I've had to grow my leadership, but it was also probably the most helpful conversations that I've had because people actually were honest with me. They told me things like this. They said, man, I love having you on the team. I love that you fix problems and you can brainstorm and get stuff solved and figured out. But sometimes when there's a problem, you're so hyper-focused on the problem that you just bulldoze everyone else in the room, and you're really harsh. And you can be really blunt with people. And if I'm being honest, sometimes you've made me feel small. Gotta tell you, it's not real fun hearing that, right? Because it was never my intention, obviously, to make someone feel small or to bulldoze people. But you know what? They were right, and I just didn't know it. I didn't realize it was a blind spot in my leadership. Someone else said, man, I love having you in meetings because, again, you're so practical and you figure out things and all that. That's great. But I hate having you in creative meetings where we're brainstorming new ideas. And I said, well, unpack that. Why? And they looked at me and they said, well, because you're so practical and you so focus on how are we actually going to do this in real life, and what are the restrictions and what are the obstacles, and do we have budget for this? And you start asking all these questions that you kill ideas before they ever have an opportunity to thrive. And I thought, gosh, I hate that, right? Like that's not, of course I didn't walk into this meeting thinking like, man, how many ideas can I crush today, right? But that's what I was doing, and I didn't even know it. Somebody else said, man, I love your sense of humor. It's great, but, sometimes you can be really sarcastic, and it kind of crosses that line into being a little bit cutting, and you kind of take these jabs at us, and I thought, gosh, I think you're right. And I got to say, when I'm in these meetings and I'm hearing this feedback, my knee-jerk reaction is I want to defend myself. And I want to tell them, well, no, you're not seeing it right. Here's how it really went down. Actually, the reason I said that was because X, Y, and Z, right? That's what I wanted to do. But here's the reality. If you want to grow, you got to listen. And so as difficult as those conversations were, they're so helpful because it identified these areas that I can grow in and that I can get better in. And so I would challenge you, man, if you are serious about wanting to grow in your leadership, if you want to be more self-aware, which all of us need to be, you've got to ask people. Do something like this with your team. Maybe it's not your team at work. Maybe you need to sit across from your spouse and ask some real honest questions and say, hey, babe, I'm not going to make you pay for this later. Just be honest with me. How am I doing? How's our family doing? And you need to have those conversations where you lean into honesty. So I challenge you to do that. So if you want to grow, you've got to pray, and then you got to listen. And last but not least, you got to change. You got to change. That's what it says in James chapter 1. It says this. It says, don't merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves, but you got to do what it says. In other words, it's one thing for you to become more self-aware, but that's not enough. You actually have to follow through and do the work of changing. It's one thing for my team to look at me and to say, hey, Steve, you've got, here's some opportunities to grow. You need to be less this, and you do this. And that's great for me to learn that. That's important. But if I don't do anything with that, man, I'm not helping anyone. So I've got to do the work to improve and to be more intentional in those arenas so that I can be a better leader. And some of you in the room, man, you've already had some people that have helped you identify some opportunities for growth. You just haven't done anything about it yet. Some of you in the room, man, the Holy Spirit has already been highlighting some areas in your life where it's like, man, you got to change this, but you've been too prideful to take the next step. And I got to tell you, if you want to be a kind of leader who is worth following, you've got to follow through all the way and embrace change. You've got to lean into the truth because what Jesus said really is true, that the truth will set you free, and it will set you free when you embrace it and when you apply that to your life. And so, as we kind of close out today, my challenge for all of us is simply this. Let's be intentional to lead ourselves well and to lead ourselves first, because self-leadership, hear this, is never just about you. It's never just exclusive to you. There are people in your life who need you at your best. For some of you, your company is depending on you. Your department is depending on you. Those students, they're depending on you. For some of you, your kids and your family are depending on you. For some of you in the room, your future spouse is depending on you to get this right. And so may we be intentional to lead ourselves well, because I'm telling you, it matters. It matters. So if you're serious about this and you say, man, I want to grow in my leadership, I would invite you and challenge you to prioritize taking advantage of opportunities like we have coming up here in a couple weeks with our Leadership Advance. You heard us talk about this just a minute ago in our church news today. And what this is a special one-night event. It's 2 hours long where we're inviting seasoned leaders from all over to come in and challenge us and inspire us to be better leaders, to grow in our leadership. And I'm telling you, man, I don't care who you are. I don't care what your position is. There's something here for you. You say, well, I don't really feel like much of a leader. You need to come, because this will be a night that could be a game changer for you as you're challenged and inspired. And as a church, we just said, man, this is so important that we just want to make this investment into you guys. We're not charging anything for this night. It's completely free. We just said, man, what would happen if some leaders got unleashed in our community? Man, what would happen if some people grew in their leadership? Man, it would change workplaces. It would change our community. It would change families. And so we said, man, we want to invest into you guys and invest into your leadership because we think it could make all the difference. So I would challenge you, man, put this on your calendar, prioritize being here, because it could be a really, really helpful thing. And your people on your team and your families, they will thank you. Trust me, they'll thank you for coming to this. For the rest of us this morning, as we kind of bring this thing to a close, I would just encourage you to let's be intentional to eliminate self-deceit and to embrace self-awareness as we strive to look and lead more like Jesus. And if we will do that, I'm telling you, it could change everything. So may we go out this week and may we do this together, and let's trust God to lead us first as we lead others. Let me pray for you and we'll get you out of here.